last session here. Thank you all who are remaining, and I appreciate that because I know people have many other places to go after we finish here. Very briefly, I wanted to thank everyone who came, and especially my science colleagues who came from many different areas. I think probably most of you realize this has been a quite unique meeting. I don't think the same or even a similar collection of diverse perspectives about eating and healthy eating has come into one room before. Certainly not at the Dietary Guidelines Committee, and I think that's been one of the strengths here. We've expanded the scope. We've raised the tent, expanded the tent, and that's been important. Did we achieve the goals we had when we set out to plan this meeting? In the short term, I think yes, we did come up with a definition of a common ground. You saw the near final version this morning, and Sara tells me she'll be circulating very shortly after the meeting the slightly edited version of that took into account the very helpful feedback we got in this room from many people during the day today. So I think that achievement of a definition of a common ground has indeed achieved the first goal. In fact, I think that area, the size of the common ground is a bit bigger than I was even hoping for at the beginning when we put this together. I think one of the conclusions of the Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee reiterated by us is that there are many ways to put together a healthy diet, and that can be done in a low carbohydrate form, in a low fat form, in a Mediterranean form, sort of in between, and almost a continuum between all of that, and still be consistent with the common ground definition, and be consistent with many different eating cultures as well. So that is, I think, very good news. Perhaps not news to many people here, but I think that is news to the general public, that there's no single diet, no single way of eating that I think we can say is the healthy way of eating. And I do appreciate the flexibility and camaraderie of my colleagues here who, again, worked into the night last night to come to some consensus here that I think will hopefully be beneficial to the public at large. Also wanted to thank the journalists who came here. I know you're all under pressure to write stories and get stories and articles out. We found it very helpful to have the feedback we got from you. And I do think part of the reason for me wanting to be involved with Sara and David and others in this meeting was that journalists really do play an important role for transmitting knowledge. We spend our lives trying to create knowledge, and to see that sitting in the medical journals alone would not be very satisfying for us. I came to appreciate this working on the trans fat area, where I've been since the late 1970s doing research on trans fat and heart disease. And when it became apparent that there was a clear relationship with cardiovascular disease, it was pretty controversial at first, but the scientific evidence did come together pretty quickly, both from long-term epidemiologic studies and controlled feeding studies. And working with Bonnie and others at the Center for Science and the Public Interest was very important in that effort. We really needed partners there. But one of the other great group of partners was journalists. And I took every opportunity to talk to journalists about trans fat, and of journalists in daily newspapers. But actually, I have to acknowledge, especially journalists for women's magazines like Shape and Ladies' Home Journal and things like that, because someone had told me, I don't know if it's still true in the media world, that's where women get the news that they trust the most. And I think, as someone mentioned, journalists in that area are not under the same time pressure you are to get to the evening news or get it in print the next morning and have the luxury, but take advantage of the time to research a story more deeply, get feedback from multiple people, do a lot of careful fact checking. And I was impressed with the quality of journalism by that group, but for many other people as well. And we eventually, again with the help of Center for Science and the Public Interest, finally got the FDA. It took about 10 years to get it, the line for trans fat on the food label. It sounds like that's a little step forward, but in fact it was a big accomplishment. But one of the things I heard back from the food industry was that when they knew they were going to have to put it on the food label, they did consumer surveys and to see if people really cared about that. And what they found was that quite a high percentage of consumers, especially women, had heard of trans fat. They didn't understand the details of it, but they knew it was not good for you. And that was critically important in making their decision to take trans fat off of the food supply. And to me, that's been sort of a little bit of a wake-up about how we create change in this country. It's not just that straight line from science into policy, or science into food industry practice, but it has sort of an interesting circle that actually required knowledge to disseminate, so that I'm cynical part of me says they probably would not have taken trans fat out of products if people just had never heard of trans fat and didn't care about it. But they did, and even losing 5 or 10% of your market share would be pretty devastating to most companies. So overnight, almost the vast majority of trans fat was taken out of products with that had to bear that label, and of course, again, the science alone wasn't enough. The fact that it had to come off of the labels, be put on the labels and then came out of the food, that wasn't enough to make the restaurant industry take trans fat out of their products. It really took proactive mayors in Boston, New York City, and some other places to essentially ban trans fat in restaurants. And eventually, it got removed from the national food supply for restaurant services for that, starting with a city-by-city basis. And finally, in 2018, it's going to happen on a national basis. But that was really the very last step in a long process that took a lot of education and awareness, and journalists very much played an important part. I really enjoyed the last panel, really, again, seeing people take information and knowledge and putting it into practice in multiple ways. I especially want to thank Ken for what he's doing at UMass. We think we're doing a pretty decent job at Harvard, but I must say when I go to UMass, it's hard not to be inspired by that. And if anybody wants a good story, as the Boston Globe did, take a trip out to UMass, and I'm sure Ken will show you around a little bit. It may be doubly remarkable because this is a financially stressed state school where all this is happening. And what he's really doing is exactly what we talk about when we talk about food literacy, because it's not just feeding college students. It really is them learning and engaging and becoming food literate. I don't know if Ken has sort of similar data. I'm sure it's likely to be what is going on at UMass too, but in Harvard Dining, students, when they come in from a survey a couple years ago, as freshmen, 10% were given the choice between brown rice and white rice. 10% were choosing brown rice. By the time they graduate, 60%. So that's something that they're going to take with them. As I said before, it doesn't end at graduation, but they really are gaining something, perhaps just as important as many of the courses that they take. That really is all about food literacy. So that's again my thank you for both the journalists and colleagues here for gathering today. I learned a lot, as usual. And there's the other question I asked, did we achieve our goals? That was a short-term goal. The long-term goal is obviously, do we really enhance the public awareness, public knowledge, and ability to eat healthier diets? And David and Sarah are going to talk about that. I guess you first, David?
Sarah first.
Sarah
I'm
first.
going
Okay.
first.
Okay.
Thank you, Walter.
I first want to thank the two of you. It's been such an honor and a pleasure to work with you, and I couldn't have done it without you, and really thank you for joining with Oldways. And to all of you in the room, thank you very much for taking time out of busy lives, flying from the UK, from California, coming from Boston. I know we all have busy lives, so thank you very much. And to the Oldways staff, they have certainly been a huge part of making this happen. And Cynthia is not here to say thank you, but thank you, Cynthia. And Carlos and Annie and Deborah and Abby, Ashley, thank you to all of you. And 2 members of the Oldways Board of Directors who have been a big support in making sure that we did this and did it right. So thank you, Phil and Kathy. So Walter was talking, whether did we achieve our goals? And when I started yesterday morning, it seems like a long time ago, but when I started yesterday morning, I said that I had 3 goals, and one was to write a clear message, which we certainly have done. And the second was to talk about the communication issues, problems, solutions, and I think we've done that. And the next is to have a campaign joining scientists and journalists and everyone else. And so that's what you and I are going to talk about, joining together with all of you to make a difference in bringing common ground to many, many more people outside of this room. So the first thing is we do have a consensus on healthy eating. We have created already at Oldways a clearinghouse. All of the scientists who are here have filled out a form saying that they're willing to be the topics that they can talk on and the best way to reach them. And we'll be adding to this. I think Cynthia has a printout, but I'm not sure. But I think the best thing is Ashley is our public relations manager, and it will be on our website, and please contact Ashley. Journalists looking for scientists, and we will be growing this resource. The podcast, we've been taking videos, and we also filmed interviews upstairs of all the scientists. So early December, we'll have videos and podcasts. And the entire video of the conference will be available for people who haven't been able to be here. Or if you missed a part, you'll be able to see whatever you missed. This is not a really good plate, but this is an idea that we have to create a center of the plate of common ground foods, a common ground plate. This is something in the future. And as we always do, we take the science and we'll create tools that, Simon, you could use in your medical practice, for dietitians to use. And here's Cynthia. I thanked everybody, and thank you, Cynthia. Walter and David and I are in discussions with the Surgeon General's office. He has a healthy eating initiative that he wants to tell us about, and we certainly will tell him about Common Ground. He was interested to come, but had a scheduling problem. And finally, we agree. And that's the introduction for David and the True Health Coalition. We and Oldways and Common Ground are joining with David to all work together to bring common ground to everyone. So thank you.
Thank you. Let's see. So while we're dealing with the technical hookup here, let's see if I've got the audio link. And Randy, there we go. I think I've got it. So it's obviously been a tremendous privilege playing this role at this conference. I think in addition to finding common ground, we really broke new ground. Certainly there are efforts to bring voices together, but the fact that we went out of our way to make sure that we started out with people who don't routinely agree. I thought that was unusual. I also thought that mixer we had the first evening, where people who have heard about one another their entire careers but actually never been in the same room, I thought, you know, that really indicated we were doing something special. And then to be able to work past that and find common ground. A privilege to be involved, a great privilege to work side by side with Walter, who of course has been a major influence on my career, a source of much of what I know, and a mentor, even if at some distance most of the time. And then, you know, frankly, I think there is no better honest broker for a discussion like this than Oldways under Sara's leadership. So again, involvement here was a great pleasure. But to reflect back and then bring us to closure, when Sara contacted me about this conference, I forget whether you had already heard about the initiative then known as Glimmer. I think you had. But it turned out we were working along parallel tracks. And I had the notion that in this age of cyberspatial noise, that no one voice can rise above anymore. It doesn't matter how many peer-reviewed publications you have. It doesn't matter how many Twitter followers you have. So Walter can't do it, and Mehmet Oz can't do it, and Sanjay Gupta can't do it, and really nobody can do it. It used to be possible. When C. Everett Koop was Surgeon General, he could be heard above the din. When Benjamin Spock was advising the nation's parents about child rearing, he could be heard above the din. But these days, nobody alone can be heard above the din. So the Horton Hears a Who concept occurred to me, and an initiative first known as Glimmer started to take shape. And I think Sara knew about it, and we, way back at the very beginning of the planning stages, said, well, wouldn't it be unique if the conference brought everybody together, it shone that bright spotlight on the issues and the opportunity, but it didn't end, even with all the great resources that Oldways can make available, but it actually inaugurated a campaign that starts where the conference concludes. And that campaign, ideally, is the True Health Initiative. And let's see if this is projecting. So I've got this on my desktop now, Randy. The extended desktop. Where is the extended desktop? What am I doing wrong here? Just pull this out of a folder? Will that do it?
I'm sorry, just open it.
I did, and it didn't show on the screen. So shouldn't that be showing now?
Yeah.
View full screen. View.
What's the?
Hang on. Let's not.
Sorry. So if you go view full screen, let's see if that should have sent it. That should send it. Full screen. This is the funny part. I'm not a Mac guy.
That's not going to happen. All right. So, well, I don't. Yeah, you guys can see what you can do. So whether or not this video will show, I certainly, this late hour, I don't want us to bog down over a technical difficulty. So this initiative essentially posits the idea that the same idea really that Sara had when she approached Walter and then me about this conference, that there is massive but unknown agreement among the world's leading experts in nutrition, health promotion, disease prevention. If you guys start playing that video behind me, I'll stop talking. But we neither do it soon or we won't do it. And that statistics don't feel personal, but they should, because they're about real people, just like you and me. Throughout my career, I've tried to empower people to take ownership of their own health because no one else can do it. The power to change their medical destinies resides with them. It's really all about lifestyle, and frankly, I think many people know this, but the media is all noise. And it's been so frustrating because people really can't get past the competing messages. This is something we have to fix. At the heart of the True Health Initiative is a coalition of world-renowned experts dedicated to disseminating only accurate, evidence, and consensus-based information about lifestyle as medicine. The public health statistics, the numbers here, tell a story. It's a story of preventable loss. It's a reduction in the quality of life for millions upon millions of people. This incredible burden of chronic disease is overwhelmingly preventable by leveraging what we have long known about healthy living. To rewrite this story, we must provide precisely that information. Over time, we can create enduring, sustainable change, ensuring our children inherit a world where preventable illness and premature death are the exception, not the norm. At the True Health Initiative, we provide clarity over confusion, not a silver bullet, but a comprehensive and sustainable approach to healthy living built on a vast foundation of scientific evidence expressed by a single authoritative source. We already have the knowledge and tools to prevent as much as 80% of the total global burden of chronic disease. Let's add years to lives and life to years. This is something we can all agree on. Join us. Be part of a global movement committed to speaking only the truth about the proven principles of lifestyle as medicine. And so that's an action you can take. So this, if you go to the True Health Initiative landing page, that video is right there, and there's an invitation to sign up. So the Council of Directors here, we had, how many scientists at this meeting? 25, 30? It was impressive, and from multiple countries, and then, Antonia here from Greece, and Miguel here from Spain, and Simon here from the UK. The Council of Directors of the True Health Initiative at this point, and many of you, of course, are in the room, and thank you for that, roughly 250 scientists from 30 countries, but also capturing the spirit of some of our discussion here today, celebrity chefs. Sam Katz, who is the Obama's personal chef, and Marcus Samuelsson and Alice Waters, who really is one of the, the luminaries in turning the power of a celebrity chef into good at the level of community. We have 3 former U.S. Surgeons General on this same council. We also have, if you will, captains of the healthcare industry, like Toby Cosgrove, who's the CEO of the Cleveland Clinic. And we also have household names who reach millions upon millions, like Sanjay Gupta. And what everybody did joining this council was read a pledge of principles very much like the common ground we landed on. In fact, the one irony of all of this is many of the people at this meeting were already on this council and had read this pledge and had agreed to these principles. So I thought getting a common ground was going to be a piece of cake. I couldn't believe it when last night we were 90 minutes into the consensus meeting and still trying to decide what a vegetable was. So what the hell's the matter with these people? But in any event, 250 people, 30 countries. And what we plan to do, and certainly working closely with Oldways, and again, the conference was this bright light on the issue. We now have a campaign to orchestrate together. But this is a group where we will put together a rapid response team to speak to media, but representing more than our own solitary voice, but representing that common ground. And so what does this True Health coalition, this global coalition, have to say? And ideally what we can do together is map out the parameters of the space within which all the media discussions have to take place. We also have a fantasy about being, for those of a certain age, the E.F. Hutton of health promotion. When the True Health Coalition speaks, people listen. What did they have to say? I certainly invite journalists in the room who are going to be writing about diet who want to know, well, what does a global coalition of scientists have to say about this? There'll be an opportunity to send that question directly to us and find out. And then we will become intimately involved in health professions education. A lot of the discussion here could reach more people if physicians and nurse practitioners and PAs and dietitians, fitness instructors, everybody who's out there dishing dietary advice rallied to these common principles and stood on the common ground with us. Through the celebrity chefs, we'll be reaching other chefs. But for now, those of you who aren't already on the council, please go to truthhealthinitiative.org. Sign up, lend your voice. If you agree that only in our unity is there the strength to rise above the constant noise in our culture and start to convey that we do agree about some very important principles of healthy living, healthy eating, and the public deserves to know that. And so the conference ends now. And once again, enormous privilege to be involved. The conference concludes. The campaign is only beginning. So, Sarah, thank you very much.
Thank you.